Off camera just for a quick second.
That's fine. Oh, I want to pause. All righty. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to another year of Conversations in Transportation. Joe, can you believe it's our fourth year doing this?
When do we
That's
start
got,
collecting royalties, Sandy?
hey, whenever you figured that out, you let me know. But anyway, thanks everybody for coming back. Our last session was at the Nixite annual meeting back in November. Well, this is the first time we've been online in a little while. So welcome back, everybody. Before we get started, the standard couple of announcements. They're the same every time. Everybody, obviously, you get the Zoom link in your registration confirmation. That's why you're here. We'll use the same email contact that you put in to send you your PDH and evaluation forms for this session. That'll be later on this afternoon or tomorrow morning. If you don't receive one by the end of tomorrow, then feel free to send me an email or send the operations account an email, and we'll get you sorted out. As far as questions that you think of during the session today, use the Q&A feature. It should be there at the bottom, on the bottom toolbar there in Zoom. We'll use that to answer questions. We use the Q&A, not the chat. Don't put them in the chat. We use the Q&A so we can track what questions we've answered and which ones we haven't. And with that, I'm going to turn it on over to Dr. Joe Hummer.
Thanks, Andy, and yes, welcome back, everybody. We're glad to be here. Glad to bring you another year of conversations. Thanks to our sponsors, or the Strategic Initiative Council with Chair Adam Fisher, and the Young Members Council with Chair Morgan Rosamond. We really appreciate their sponsorship, and of course our corporate sponsors of Nixite, who make all of this possible. We really appreciate your support of our programs. Our guest today is the chair, the CEO, I should say, of ITE International. We're going to talk about the state of the transportation profession in general and ITE in particular, and look ahead to the coming years in the profession and with the organization. Steve Kuciemba became executive director of ITE in November of 2023 after a long career in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. During the year before he became CEO, he served as ITE's chief technical officer and deputy executive director. He's worked in the public, private, nonprofit transportation sectors for 36 years, including time at General Motors, the Maryland State Highway Administration, Smart Route Systems, ITS America, and WSP. He's been an ITE member since 1991 and is now a fellow. He was active in the Washington, D.C. section and created the Connected and Automated Vehicle Standing Committee. So, Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, Joe.
And let's start out by talking about your new job a little bit. How's it going? Is it sort of what you expected? Any surprises so far?
I tell you, honestly, it's going great. I wouldn't call it surprises other than perhaps how much I'm really enjoying it right now. Every day I get to immerse myself in a wide variety of issues, whether it's technical and policy discussions or working with district and sections to advance their goals and talking to younger professionals. I mean, all of these different aspects of the job, I've really enjoyed it. And in fact, I've really especially enjoyed talking to some of the younger professionals that are out there because, well, that's the future of our profession, as you know.
For sure that. Yep. What are your sort of big initiatives or priorities as CEO?
Well, fortunately for me, ITE International, our board of direction, and many of our members, we adopted a new strategic plan this past August. It was approved at the board meeting at our annual meeting out in Portland, Oregon. So we have a brand new strategic plan covering 2024 to 2026 that I'm very fortunate to have been taken part in the development of it. So I'm comfortable with it. The strategic plan is essentially continuing a lot of the great momentum that we've been building on here post-COVID. And looking even further forward, how can we do more in the areas of safety? How can we be a little bit more bold and continue to have an international footprint? How can we continue to mix engineering and planning? How can we better represent our profession overall? I think the strategic plan is a great reflection of what ITE's membership is right now internationally.
And we all can find that at the website easily, right?
Yes, and last November, we had a feature article in our ITE journal as well that kind of gave a nice little 2-page summary of the strategic plan as well last November.
Good, good. Membership around 18,000. Am I correct about that?
Yes, it's been on a great pace of growth this past several years here. We've added a lot of new agency members. We just recently added Texas DOT and New York State DOT. We actually have over 250 public agencies that are registered as members now. We've continued to see what I would call healthy incremental growth across many of our districts and sections. We've added some new student chapters internationally in India and Bangladesh, and Pakistan. We've been able to, because we've had this growth, we've been able to really bring additional value, I think, to many of our members. We've been able to, a couple of years ago, we made all of our webinars free to members. We've been able to put out a lot of new products and publications. We've developed a speakers bureau, a photo exchange. We got the traffic wiki. So we've had a lot of new products that have benefited because we have more members. We're at a good point right now in the organization. I know your section, the North Carolina section, and the Southern District in general has really done a nice job of offering a lot of opportunities for members to get involved. So it's not just at the international level. In fact, we find of those 18,000 members, probably a vast majority will get involved at the section or at the district level. And I know I myself am looking forward to coming to Wilmington for the district meeting in mid-April. So I'll be down in your fine neck of the woods here in just a matter of weeks.
Good. Yeah, we're looking forward to that meeting and look forward to seeing you there. You mentioned agency members. I am an agency member through my job at NCDOT, and I really appreciate that opportunity. It sounds like that's going well. My question is, do you find that agency members are well engaged with the organization?
Yes, and I think it's because of the convenience, if you will. It's a great opportunity for if someone only wants to visit a couple webinars here and there, or they want just the journal. One of the things I found when I became a member of ITE was I didn't realize the scope of the many different ways that people engage in it. I mentioned that some will engage just with districts and sections, some will engage with councils or committees, some will engage with an employer council. Some will go to a meeting, some won't. Some will only read the magazine. Some will do a webinar. When you join as an agency member, we're able to satisfy all those different needs. So, a larger agency may have 150, employees that are part of ITE, and there might be 145 different ways that those employees want to be able to engage. And because we have all those different touch points, they can. And so that's one of the beauties of the agency membership is it really affords something for everybody. And we're really excited about that. And of course, if you bring agency members, you bring private sector because they want to be able to have access through networking, through engagement and other activities. So I think our membership growth has been a self-fulfilling philosophy. By getting more public sector involved, we get more private sector involved. And, it's just been great overall.
Great. And that has been my experience, and I think most of my fellow agency members at NCDOT for sure. Where are the big growth areas in membership? Any particular geography or any particular sector of the profession? Anything you can point to and say that's the one that's kind of really leading the charge?
Well, I think we've always maintained a strong technical membership when it comes to the engineering profession. And obviously, I think you're as well as aware as well as I am that it's not just civil engineers anymore. It's engineers of all professions that have gotten involved in transportation. And we've continued to see strong representation. But our community of transportation professionals has really gotten broad over the years, and in particular in a post-COVID environment where planning has and engineering working together has become not just a luxury, but a necessity now. And when you bring data into that, the prevalence of data science and data scientists, we've really seen a lot of growth in areas in addition to engineering. We had a pretty strong initiative over the past couple of years to engage more planners in ITE. We did a lot of study, a lot of focus groups. We did a lot of surveying. And first of all, we discovered that a lot of planners were already here as part of ITE. More than a third of our membership presented themselves as having planning functions in their job. I know, coming from the consulting business just before I came here, that the phrase plangineer was quite common. Most planners did some engineering, most engineers did some planning, and that the line between the two has really started to break down out of necessity. If we're going to develop great communities, if we're going to make changes in how we view society, then you have to have planning and engineering working together. And then, of course, the other wild card has been the emergence of data. And we've seen a lot of growth in data sciences and data scientists becoming part of ITE membership. So it's been wonderful to see this growth. We've really referred to ourselves as, ITE, a community of transportation professionals, because that's what we are now. We are no longer just engineers.
And along those lines, we heard a rumor that the name was changing of the organization.
The name is not changing per se. We are always going to be ITE. What we're going to do is stop emphasizing Institute of Transportation Engineers and start focusing more on ITE, a community of transportation professionals. We're not going to make any legal changes. People don't, sections and districts don't have to go and change any of their charters. But what we heard loud and clear from our members is that they use ITE, they use a community of transportation professionals largely. And therefore, we want to be able to reflect that. So we're not changing the name, we're just transitioning to how we emphasize how it's used. And we're gonna focus on that community portion, that community of transportation professionals, but we're still always going to be ITE. That's not going to change.
Okay, good deal. Briefly, breakdown of membership by age and gender, the days of ITE that maybe when I was breaking in, it was kind of a club for old white guys like we are now. But that's gone, right?
Oh, it's changed dramatically. In fact, I asked Colleen Egan, who's our director, our chief membership officer, to give me some numbers on that. And about 25%, a little more than 25% of our membership is under the age of 35. And then a little over half our membership is between those core working years of 35 to 65. So, more than 3/4 of our membership are not old. Now, is there still a strong prevalence of males? Yes, I think that in part reflects our industry. We are improving significantly. We have more than 25% of our members are now female. However, to me, I think the metric isn't necessarily the number, but it's the quality and the engagement. And what I've really seen, and what makes me really proud of the work that we've done at the section, district, and international level, is the engagement in leadership of women in ITE. Your section is a great example. Your current leader, Kelly, within the Southern District, Lindsay Walker, your past president of the district, Krista, your international director, Becky Rogers, again, all women leaders within ITE. And at the international level, while John Davis is our current president right now, prior to him, the three prior presidents were all women in ITE. And next year, as Karen Aspelin ascends, we'll have another woman in leadership. So while we're seeing moderate growth in numbers, we're seeing significant growth in leadership positions across ITE International in women. So I'm really excited about that. It is definitely not just a club for old white guys anymore. It really has changed. Yes, we can do better, and we're going to continue to do better, but I'm excited about the engagement that we do have.
Me too. Very good. Good. You mentioned, I think a student chapter formation in India, and I've made some trips to China, did some little bit of work there. Thousands of people that are in transportation profession in China and in India, and yet that has not been a big area for membership for ITE through the years. Any prospects for us in especially those two huge countries?
Well, as I mentioned, we do have some student chapters in India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. We do have a professional chapter just forming in Pakistan right now. So there will be some growth in that area. Implementing a growth strategy globally is hard. It's not simple to do because you end up battling that constant balance of, do I serve the bulk of our members who are not global or who are already represented here? How much energy do we put on growing globally? It's costly, it's time consuming. I'm a firm believer in balancing that, making sure that we take care of the members we have, and then looking forward to how growth benefits the members that we have. So, for example, if we do begin to put more energy into growth in India and Pakistan and some of those areas, how does that benefit our districts and our sections in Canada and Australia and New Zealand, and of course here in the US, where we have a lot of our strength? We recently have had a lot of discussions with both Canada and Australia and New Zealand districts about what more can we do globally. And we recognize there are differences in issues, but then there are also similarities in issues. Many of those similarities falling more into the leadership and the soft skills, recognizing that some of the technical issues are going to be different on the way that they're focused on. So what can we do in growth in some of those areas? One of the ways that a lot of our student chapters really get their seed globally is from students here in the US that either return to their home country or relocate to another country, and they've been active here, and they bring that with them to whatever their country of origin is or destination. So I think it's a really long way of saying we are going to continue to see growth globally, but I don't anticipate that it's going to be significant, and I don't believe it's going to be aggressive. I believe it's going to be incremental.
Fair enough. It is traffic is traffic worldwide, but yeah, a lot of the rules, a lot of the regulations, standards, whatever, are different enough to make that more difficult.
And there are things that we'll learn. I think that if you look at the state of bike ped here in the US, we've learned a lot from our European brethren, but we've also learned there are differences as well. Are we able to be the next Copenhagen? Well, maybe there are certain urban areas that can, but there are many suburban and exurban areas that just can't.
Right.
And I think that we learn a lot of that. So the more that we continue to dip our toe internationally and gather benefits and gather lessons learned, that benefits our members.
Sure.
Growth for the sake of growth is never positive. Growth because it's benefiting, that's where my focus is.
Gotcha. Good. Switching gears a little bit, talk about some of the services ITE provides. My impression of the ITE headquarters staff these days, over the last few years, since I've been on the board of the North Carolina section for sure, is the staff is fantastic, quick and helpful. I have never had a bad experience calling or emailing up to staff there, and see you nodding. I'm sure you agree with that.
Well, thank you.
The question is, how do we maintain that out into the future?
Well, obviously, hiring and retention of good employees, that's no matter what field, no matter what employer you're in, that's always a challenge. I'm very fortunate that I inherited a full staff. Jeff Pagnotti and Jeff Lindley before me, they did a great job of building a strong team here. And we have some great individuals. As you mentioned, they've been very responsive. Customer service is very important here. It's really part of the culture here on staff. My philosophy has always been that team chemistry is important, that we focus well as a team, that we'll service everyone well as a team. And so I plan to continue a lot of that emphasis right now. And I believe that a strong team will pay for itself 10 times over. So my goal is to maintain what, that great customer service that you've experienced. And I hope that any member here, if they ever feel that they haven't experienced that, please let me know.
But they set a high bar for sure.
Yeah.
The staff is great. IT annual meeting and spring meeting. How are they doing for attendance and for finances? And then the related question is a lot of grumbles about the high cost of especially registration for those meetings. So yeah, how are they doing, and can we kind of control the cost a bit?
Well, for the spring conference, again, we've made that a virtual conference only, and our reason for doing that, of course, at first that began with COVID, but we've continued that on because we've noticed that the overlap in attendance between the spring conference and the annual meeting is by no means 100%. There are many folks that only attend the spring virtual conference, and there are many folks that only attend the in-person. So in some respects, we're serving two different audiences to some degree. We've been able to keep the costs of the virtual spring meeting, I think, quite reasonable, at least compared to some virtual meetings. When it comes to the annual meeting, my research has shown that we are reasonable and that we are lower than some of our competitor meetings. If you look at other comparable associations that our members might engage with, we believe our prices are competitive, if not more reasonable on all those. What I will say is that attendance for both the spring conference and the annual meeting has continued to grow. Last year in Portland, we set our highest mark since the late 90s when ITE was in Austin, Texas. That was the high water mark, and we reached back towards that level again. And I can tell you that our friends up in Philadelphia are expecting record numbers this late July. So I think while there's always going to be grumbles about what things cost, another benefit, of course, of your public agency membership is agencies can register for these events at significant discounts. So, again, I think there's many different ways that our members can get engaged in things, and the meetings are two of them, but two of many.
Sure. Good. And I think that you mentioned the webinars already, and I think that has been a very positive development coming out of COVID. Some people around here accuse me of being the main cheerleader for webinars. I love this technology, but I think you all do too. So the webinar schedule going to continue or grow, or what do you see with that aspect?
Webinars and publications are two great ways for sharing knowledge and sharing information. And I would say 2023 was not only a high watermark again, but a great level for us to aim for in 2024 and beyond. ITE International put on over 50 webinars last year. And I know if you look across our sections and districts, there was at least 50 more webinars put on. So out of those 18,000 members, there were many opportunities for information sharing. And I know I can't speak for the sections and districts, but at the international level, our webinars have been averaging about 250 registrants. Now, how many of those attend live versus circle back and look at the recording? It's usually about 2/3 live and 1/3 recorded. That's been generally the pattern. It might vary. There have been certain topics where we've maxed out at our 500 mark. Any topic dealing with safety often, garners a lot of excitement and a lot of interest. So they've been hugely popular. We also really have increased the number of publications that have been put out over the past year. Our councils and committees and our staff have really put out some great materials, and we've kind of gotten in a groove as far as 4 different types. We have quick bites, which are usually 1 to 3 pages, just something that can quickly generate information. It doesn't take a long time to get it put together and published through a PDF. It's free to all members of ITE. And we put out quite a few of those, over a dozen of those last year. We have technical briefs. Tech briefs can be 5, 10, 12 pages long. And again, that can be produced fairly quickly through a PDF. It's also free to ITE members. and we put out quite a lot of those. When you get to the informational report, which is more detailed, of 50 plus pages, or the recommended practice, which those don't come very often. Recommended practices not only take a lot of peer review and input, but they're juried. There's an appeals process. There's a formal vote by the board. If we put out 1 or 2 of those a year, that's pretty rare because recommended practices take a lot. But across those 4 different publication types, last year, we put out 24 publications. So between 50 webinars and 25 publications, we did a lot of information sharing. And that doesn't even include the meetings, the ITE journal, and some of the other great products and services and workshops that we've had.
And just following up on that, if one of our listeners was interested in, had an idea for, hey, I'd like to get a quick bite out there to our 18,000 fellow ITE members, go up through a council or a committee. Is that
yes, that's exactly it. Exactly it. Go through one of the councils or committees. I know your section and your district have some technical councils and committees. One of the things that we're trying to get better at here within ITE is connecting our districts and sections to our councils and committees. You mentioned in the intro that I had helped create the Connected Automated Vehicle Standing Committee a number of years ago, back in 2017. And at the time, we were largely an international group. We really didn't interface much with districts and sections. And one of the things that we've really tried to improve on here more recently, and as part of our new strategic plan, is to get better connectivity between the districts and sections and our councils and committees. But if you go to ITE's website and you click on councils or committees, you can see the full list. We have 6 councils, and each one of those councils has anywhere from 2 to 3 committees under them. Pretty much any topic or issue that you want is covered by one of our committees. Just the sheer volume of numbers. There's a lot of interest. They are very member driven. Some associations, the staff drives the councils and committees. Here at ITE, they're very member driven, which means if members have an interest in an issue, it's going to go forward. It's going to get attention. It's going to get time to it. And the staff is there to help both guide and bring it to publication. So if one of your members has a topic they're interested in, by all means, go to our website, get engaged in a council or committee. Easiest way to do that, again, once you identify the council or committee, you go through our e-community. Again, another free resource to members. The e-community is a great way to get involved in an activity.
And the council and committee meetings these days are all virtual. I don't have to travel anywhere to sit in on a meeting, right?
Yeah, they are all virtual. Yes, we do take advantage of our annual meeting for them to get together. Those are less meeting and more showcase, for giving an opportunity for people who haven't engaged recently to find out what's going on. During TRB, the councils also often got together, again, a kind of a showcase format for people to be able to get involved. But the actual meetings and the activities, everything is done virtually nowadays. It's amazing how much we can produce through virtual engagement.
Great. I see a question in the Q&A from Kelly, our president. Appreciate that. Thanks, Kelly. And it was exactly the next question I was going to ask anyway. So thanks again, Kelly. And she asked for a variety of reasons. We've seen a drop off in our student chapter engagement in the past few years. Is IT seeing that trend nationally? And are there some things our section could be doing better to help engage the future generation of transportation professionals? I'd add to that, is there a good example out there, a section or a district that you see that's really, winning in that area?
I think you and I had a brief conversation electronically about this topic, and the engagement will go up and down, because students come and go, so the engagement will often go up and down. But I have not seen a trend nationally of disengagement. I have not seen a trend of drop off. I think it really does ebb and flow depending on what's going on. I know here at International, about a year and a half ago, we hired a dedicated staff person because we now have, over 150 student chapters worldwide. So there's a lot of different student activities. Many of the districts, have active student liaison committees that work with the different ones. Obviously one of the key factors is having a good faculty advisor. If there's a faculty advisor, you in Chapel Hill, you have Dr. Huntsinger, Lita Huntsinger, and she's very engaged and gets a lot of folks involved. One of the things I love about that particular example also is that it's not rooted in the College of Engineering. Lita's a planner, and she has organized the student chapter from the planning angle. So there are some really good examples, I think, where that happens. There's also a lot of opportunities for students. Our education council has been having a lot of conversations about what can we do to get more faculty advisors aware and engaged of what's going on. In fact, the day before our annual meeting this summer in Philadelphia, we're going to do a one-day workshop with educators. And I think they've got like 75 or 80 educators potentially lined up for that, which will be a great opportunity to talk about the different things that faculty advisors can do. My personal observation, having now talked to several student chapters, is that it's hard to make cookie cutter recommendations because they vary so much. Not just whether or not they're part of the College of Engineering or College of Urban Planning or whatever, but because the schools and the programs vary so greatly. Many of the programs around the country are focused heavily at the graduate level. There are some that are focused at the undergraduate level. And it's been a few years for you and I since we were at the undergraduate level, but your priorities are very different as a student at the undergraduate level versus the graduate level versus becoming a young professional. And one of the things that we've really focused on within ITE is not only building up our connectivity to student chapters and the opportunities for student chapters, but providing resources once they make that transition from student to young professional, because that's a big potential gap. You graduate from college, you get that first job, and you're overwhelmed. Many students are overwhelmed. If they work for the public sector, they're just swimming with new knowledge and information and trying to figure out what to do. If they work for the private sector, if they're a consultant, they're all of a sudden thrown into being 90% billable and they don't have time to breathe, or to work what's going on. So we've really worked hard to try to provide a constant path for students at the undergrad, students at the grad, young professionals, and help them progress throughout all of those areas.
Good, good. And that's something North Carolina section has really looked at and emphasized over the last few years too, is the transition to younger member. How can we ease that? ITE has members that build big highways and other members that only work on pedestrian and bicycle projects. ITE tries to be a big tent in that sense. Some of these folks don't see eye to eye. In fact, they think really the other is pretty much the enemy, or maybe that's overstated. But sometimes there's not a lot of sympathy from one side of that spectrum to the other. So can an organization be that big tent, and are we succeeding in that?
I think we have to be that big tent. I think that the way we are successful is to be able to have intelligent debate and discussion. The way we are successful is to communicate differences. The profession has changed a lot. When you and I were cutting our teeth in the early days, there was a lot of cookie cutter. There was a lot of cookbook, plug and chug formulas. That's not the case anymore. Even the new MUTCD uses things like engineering judgment, context sensitive. No two situations are alike anymore. And to me, that's what makes ITE so valuable, is that we have these different perspectives. We have rural, exurban, suburban, urban, dense urban. We have US, we have Canada, we have Australia, New Zealand, we have other global. We have young professionals, we have mature professionals. We have professionals that view the issues through different lenses, whether it's race or whether it's gender, whether it's geographic location. To me, that's our strength. Can we do this? I think we've all seen a breakdown in society when it comes to expressing different views. We've all seen the breakdown in our political environment of expressing different views. And I think that there will always be the marginal cases where we have problems with that. But the more that we as a profession can continue to provide a platform for constructive discussion, the better off we're all going to be. I look at our e-community, you know, and again, that's a bulletin board. It's an electronic form of media, of course. So you're going to get people who spout off in ways that are probably not polite, not respectful. And there's always this temptation of, oh my God, do I cut off that conversation? And one of the lessons that Jeff Pagnotti taught me very early on during our transition is he said, we'll often self-correct. Our industry will self-correct. And I've seen a couple conversations in e-community start to go off the rails. Somebody said a couple things that are beyond provocative and are probably either unprofessional or unwarranted, but we self-correct. Someone comes in behind and says, no, 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 no. We shouldn't look at it that way. We should look at it other ways. And it dies back down again. And that to me is the surest sign of our future success, is that we within ITE, we within our industry can still have constructive debate. You know, it's never going to be easy. We won't always agree, but as long as we're there and as ITEs, our goal is to always provide that big tent. I think it's necessary for our future.
Got to keep the debate going. I think
Absolutely.
I agree. And along those lines, there's many people in society at large that blame our profession for a lot of the ills out there that you know, they think transportation professionals just want to move cars faster. We want to encourage sprawl. We want to do projects to pad our profits. Is ITE engaging with that in trying to boost sort of the respect for our profession, or to tamp down those opinions, or answer those critics, I guess would be a better way to say it, of our profession?
I think the best way you answer the critics is to do well going forward and not look backwards. Yes, there are mistakes that were made 30 years ago. It was a different environment 30 years ago. You know, our society was different 30 years ago. So while we could sit here and harp on the mistakes we made, what's better is to learn from them and to go forward. You know, ITE has a diversity and equity committee, a diversity and inclusion committee, but also an equity committee. We have a sustainability committee. Each one of those looks at how can we do better? How can we do different? You know, we can't always change the sins of the past. And of course, many of those aren't our fault to begin with. You know, it's very easy to blame the engineer. It's very easy to blame the planner, but often they're taking direction from the legislator or the policymaker who's putting that in place. You know, it's kind of funny. I learned very early in my career when I was working at Maryland State Highway Administration. We had an administrator who we all loved. You know, he was a planner and engineer by background. He knew his stuff. And a new governor came in, and within 2 days, the administrator was gone. And I was still young in my career, and I'm like, well, why did that happen? Is it just politics? And I found out that that new governor had previously been a county administrator, and he had wanted a traffic signal at a particular intersection. And our administrator at the time said, the numbers aren't there. It doesn't warrant it. It would be a detriment to safety if you put it there. Well, he didn't care. He wanted it there, and he never forgot that. And that's why he fired him the minute that he got into that position. And that was a quick lesson for me that sometimes politics don't follow logic. Sometimes decision makers don't follow the science. And therefore, we can only do as well as the hand that we're dealt. And of course, if you look at funding and resources, my gosh, you work for a public agency. How many times have you run up against, well, I can't hire because the legislature set a cap on the number of positions that I can have in an agency? Well, that sucks. That's the reality that you're stuck with. And so it's easy to blame the engineers and the planners, but we're sometimes only as good as the environment that we're put in. Now, with that aside, there are still things that we can and will do better. And I think within ITE, we've tried to really promote within our profession learning. You know, I mentioned about engineers and planners learning how to work better together, changing that culture. You know, you and I were both very involved in traffic operations throughout our career, and the whole rise of transportation systems management and operations, of TISMO, of understanding that you don't just build it and then whatever happens, happens, but we have to operate and maintain it and look at it as a system. That's a culture change. And I think we've come a long way in our profession of looking at how we can do things better. The whole concept of complete streets, of looking at social engineering, of understanding curbside management and how it's changing, those are all reflections of our society changing and our profession trying to change along with it. Does it happen overnight? No, nothing happens overnight. It's one thing about our profession that I've enjoyed, you know, over my, you know, more than 30 plus years, is that nothing happens fast. And that's both a blessing and a curse. It's a curse because obviously technology changes fast and opinions change fast. But it's a blessing also if some new politician comes in and says, I want to change the world. Well, it's just not going to happen that way. By the time you've gotten through environmental review and approval, and you've done your initial planning, and then you've gotten your funding allocated, and then you've gone through procurement, you're 3 generations of politicians removed already by then. And it really does, again, self-correct. It gives us a chance to make change, but make change perhaps more at a modest incremental pace.
Yeah, you're right. We have to pack our patience and a thick skin sometimes too.
Yeah,
Along those lines, one of the criticisms of our profession is that it just takes so long to get to a ribbon cutting, and compared to other countries, the U.S. seems to really lag in this regard. We got an idea, something that, you know, there's widespread agreement that should be done, and we even have the money, but it takes several decades to get to the ribbon cutting. So this may be a bigger question than ITE, but you know, as you're out there talking with people, do you see any hope of that changing, or at least, you know, stabilizing so it doesn't continue to take longer?
That's a tough question, Joe, because again, so much of that is driven by procurement policy. So much procurement policy is driven by decades of incremental adjustments. You take a procurement policy that was written in 1965, and then you incrementally add adjustments and changes to it. And by the time you get done, you have 175 pages of something that you really don't quite understand. And that's a challenge right now that is hard to overcome. What I have seen, however, is that funding does help change a lot of those ills of the past. And with the new bipartisan infrastructure law and the influx of grant monies and opportunities that have come in there, we've seen projects move from concept to deployment much more efficiently. Is it perfect? No, but we've certainly made a lot of great strides. And some of that is the federal government recognizing that we've got to do better and that they've made some enhancement. Some of it is local governments recognizing we're going to lose out on this opportunity if we don't do better, because again, you know, politics change quickly. We better get this, you know, get these shovels going before the political tides change. You know, and some of it is the language around the funding itself. Some of these new funding programs, like the Safe Streets for All program, are really focused on immediate solutions to very visible problem of safety. And I think that it's great that, you know, that this is available now. You know, are we going to fix it overnight? No, but I think we're going in the right direction. And I am hopeful right now. I think the bipartisan infrastructure law, the influx of money has helped a lot. It's kind of like, to use a sports analogy, you know, winning cures all ills. If the team is not perfect and they start winning a lot, you don't realize the team's not perfect. But boy, if the team starts losing a lot, all of a sudden there's a lot of infighting in the locker room and the coach gets fired and things are a mess. So, you know, money cures a lot of ills.
It does help. Sure. Yep. A reminder to our participants that if you have a question, load it into the Q&A. We've got a few minutes left here, and we'll handle those as they're occurring. One of our stalwarts, Bert DeSico, asked a good question. Will ITE provide guidance to the next federal transportation bill? How we'll do that, and we'll partner with other organizations.
Well, thanks, Bert. That is definitely, I'm not surprised you asked that question. Definitely in your wheelhouse. The short answer is yes. ITE will provide input. Guidance is a strong word. We do not lobby, obviously, but we do provide a lot of education on what some of the areas are. A number of years ago, ITE did form a committee to look at what some of the major issues were. And they provided that input to USDOT and to the legislators about that. The best way we go about that is we form a committee generally at the international level, but we try to engage representation from our districts and sections. And we'll likely do that again right now. I just had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with some of our staff about that. And, 2026 will be the year that reauthorization will come up yet again. God, it just seems like yesterday, but that 5 years goes by fast when you're having fun. And so if 2026 is the year that we'll be doing that, that means in 2025, we really have to have some of our guidance put together. So later this year, I'll probably start putting together an exploratory committee looking at that. And we welcome volunteers, Bert, if you want to be part of something like that. No good idea should never go without being involved.
I'm making Bert sorry you asked that question, but
I already wrote down his name, Bert DeSico. Yep, it's written down.
awesome. Can't let the hour go by without talking about safety. To me, number one issue in our profession has been, since I joined, I work in it every day, so maybe that's a little bit of my viewpoint, but I think that's pretty widely shared. Seems to have gotten worse lately, certainly with COVID, but even before COVID and in the year or two after, the fatality numbers have not seemed to decrease. And the sense that what we do, transportation professionals at our jobs, most of us, we're sort of nibbling at the edges. That our chance to make a big dent in the safety numbers, especially the fatalities, it's hard to see that. So I guess I'm asking you to build up our hopes a little bit here. What are you seeing nationally or internationally to give us hope that we really can make a big difference in safety?
Well, actually going on right now at the same time that you and I are having this conversation, just a few blocks from me at the USDOT headquarters, there's a big meeting going on right now celebrating the 2-year anniversary of USDOT's National Roadway Safety Strategy. We're just hitting the 2-year anniversary of that. Safety is a huge issue. Not only does the USDOT recognize that, as you mentioned, it's pretty much a universal concern. The safe system approach, which has really become part of our vernacular, part of our everyday focus nowadays, it teaches us that there are many solutions to the same problem, and that the only way to really reach towards our vision of zero fatalities is to employ many different solutions. There's not one solution that's going to make a massive difference. It's going to take the cumulative effect of many different solutions, looking at safer vehicles, whether that's through technology, through crashworthiness, safer roads, whether that's through our geometric design or other technology, smarter drivers, or recognizing that vehicle operators are going to make mistakes, and how do we design for the fact that they will make mistakes. Speeds, speed's a controversial issue. If you go out in the rural middle part of the country where, they want to keep their 75-mile-an-hour speed limit because, damn it, they're out in the middle of the rural country and they want to do that. But there's enough evidence that tells us that speed is an issue, and that if there are ways that we can design for lower speeds, the ways that we can influence more reasonable speeds. Sometimes we've made mistakes in the past where we've set speed limits. We've set a speed limit of perhaps 30 or 35 miles an hour through a downtown area, yet we've designed the roadway with 6 lanes wide and they're 15 feet wide. And, it's basically encourage everyone, hey, look at this straightaway, you should speed, even though it shouldn't be that way. So there are things we can do to be more smart about that, to be wiser about that. And it's just going to take time. How do we influence the culture of that? I was in a conversation circle during TRB with a lot of other public health and safety experts. And one individual, she just recently retired from the city of Houston, Veronica Davis. She mentioned, how do we change the culture where it's not okay to do a hit and run? It's not okay to hit a pedestrian and to drive off. And she said, we're experiencing 7 or 8 of those a month. And it's just horrific of how do we change the culture for that? Well, part of the way we change the culture is that every one of us becomes an advocate. Every one of us has to really scream at the top of our lungs how important safety is. I was at the University of Florida last week at a student leadership summit, and Secretary Perdue of the Florida DOT was there. And he looked at everyone in the audience and he said, we should all make it our mission to be an advocate for safety. We know what causes crashes. We should do more about it. And he said, I give you that charge as you go throughout your career to be an advocate for safety. And that's a great message. No matter what your position is in this industry, no matter what your responsibility is, everyone has to be an impassioned advocate for safety. One of the things that ITE did with this new strategic plan that I mentioned that I'm really proud of is we talked about safety in the context of it's not just something that we need to continue to focus on, but perhaps we need to be a little bit more bold with our voices. Perhaps we need to be a stronger advocate for changing the culture that roadway safety is not something to be overlooked. Now, we don't know exactly what that means yet, and we're actually developing a series of sessions and workshops over the next year to better define what it means to change the culture of safety. But we recognize that it is something that perhaps we need to be more aggressive about. I don't know exactly how yet, but I do expect ITE to be, we've always been strong. We've been a huge supporter of Vision Zero. We've been a strong supporter of the safe system approach. We've really helped advocate for that. But I think going forward, we want to do even more. So that's something that I think you'll hear out of ITE International in the coming years of how can we even do more? How can we make sure that we are an advocate for that and that every one of our members, 18,000 advocates could be very, influential over time.
That could work. Yep. We got a few more minutes. One more question came into the Q&A. Thank you to Christian. Are there plans to continue adding new chip generation studies to allow better evaluation of traffic impact? We've seen some recent new businesses added, but are there plans to improve the different types of businesses being evaluated? Chip generation manual remains one of the sort of bedrock publications of ITE, and it's used by thousands of our members, and it's pretty indispensable. So yeah, good question, Christian. What do you think?
Definitely is. Yeah, both trip gen and parking generation manuals are both, absolute staples, I call them, of ITE's product offering. We just updated parking gen at the end of last year. So every 4 years we update each of those. Trip generation is due for a new release, a new update. Will be the 12th version, I think. I got to look at my numbers on that. Might be 11th. Anyways, that's due for an update in 2026. 2026, that's due for an update. Or is it 2025? Anyways, we are actually in the process right now of looking at entering deep into the data collection phase to start renewing the amount of data that we have for that. Of course, public agencies play a huge role in that. There are many public agencies that collect data, and that please, we welcome you to share that with us. Reach out to me, reach out to our staff. If you are a current user of the trip generation manual, most of you now use it on the app. Use it on your device rather than, there are still some people that print out the PDF, but a majority of them now use it on their app. And there's a link on there where you can contribute data to it. We're only as good as the data that we get. Are there new use cases constantly being developed? Yes, always. We got a request from several members recently to look at pickleball courts. Pickleball's the new hot thing right now. So we got to start looking at pickleball courts. So those are the kind of things that we're always looking at. How do we get better at collecting data? How do we get better at manipulating and storing the data? And then probably most importantly, how do we get better at using the data? We had a great set of conversations surrounding the parking generation manual when that came out last fall. That again, this is no longer, we're not in the cookbook phase anymore, where you take the data and say, well, the data says this, therefore we shall. That's just not how it works anymore. It is an input. It is one input. But there are many different factors that go into your decisions, whether when you're doing a TIA, when you're doing a parking generation analysis. These are important tools, but they are not the answer alone. And so while we want to continue to improve the data that's behind it, we want to continue to improve the analysis and updatability of it, we also want to make sure that our members understand how to use that as well.
Good. Time getting away from us, maybe time for one or two more questions. I know we've got young members looking in, so advice to our younger members. If there's somebody looking in now who aspires to be executive director of ITE someday, what would be your advice? How does one obtain a job like that?
Well, I mentioned I spoke last week at the University of Florida at a student leadership summit, and I gave them several pieces of advice. First of all, networking and expanding your network is so important. It used to be who you know. Well, who you know is still important, but learning from who you know is what's really important. And that gets into the whole mentoring thing. I can't emphasize enough the value of mentoring. No matter what point you are in your career, you should both be mentoring and be a mentor. I've mentored many young professionals over my career. I'm still mentoring some. I still have a mentor myself. I think that, it's a two-way relationship. So make sure that you take advantage of that opportunity. I know many sections and districts have active mentoring programs. So take advantage of that. Take advantage of being a member of ITE with all these webinars and professional skill development and training opportunities. Again, that's a great benefit. All of these webinars are free. If you want expanded training, we have a really great expanded traffic impact analysis course. We have a safe systems approach. You've heard it here first. We're actually developing a new certificate course for later this fall on how to best use the new MUTCD. Because again, there's engineering judgment, there's context sensitivity, and it's not just a cookbook. So we're going to be developing a new course for this fall on how to use the MUTCD. Get involved in your section, get involved in your district, get involved in international. There's many different things that you can gain from that. There's the technical knowledge or the policy guidance. There's the relationships that you develop from getting involved. There's the leadership skills that you involved. Joe, you were a good example. You were involved as a leader throughout many of the section and district activities. And that really helps you, not just your career, but it helps you understand. Nothing builds your constitution like understanding how to motivate volunteers. Pretty hard to fire volunteers, pretty hard to motivate volunteers, and it's pretty hard to manage the fact that, all right, I got 75 volunteers and I got 3 of them that want to do most of the work. How do I get others involved? Those are life lessons that can translate to so many different things. Before I even became a parent, I was very involved in many committees. And I took some of those lessons into being a parent. And then, of course, once I became a parent, I took some of those lessons into being committees. So when you're young in your career, getting involved is something that will be with you for the rest of your life, for the rest of your career. So take advantage of all of that. Take advantage of all the opportunities that you have at your section, at your district, and at the international level.
Let's leave it there. We're at 1:30. Thank you to our participants, and those who put questions, and everybody who was listening. And thank you to Andy for organizing, and a big thank you to Steve. Really appreciate the conversation. This was great. Yeah, like we were talking about, we could have probably carried on for another couple hours here. Let's do that in Wilmington. We'll find you in the hallways there.
Everybody find me there. Yep.
Good. Look forward to that. So we do appreciate it. Remember, complete your evaluation and obtain your PDH certificate like Andy talked about. We'll be back in April with another conversation. And in the meantime, let's keep talking transportation. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you all.